do you think the state should be funding safe spaces for drug users? People call them different things, but like drug consumption rooms, basically, because a committee of MPs has recommended that Scotland should introduce the use of these rooms. Now, one of the things here is because Scotland can't basically do this without some funding and support from Westminster. And now what people are suggesting is if that support and funding doesn't come from Westminster, perhaps Scotland could do whatever it is that would be required to allow it to basically do this for itself. Before I get onto the kind of nuances of funding and Westminster versus Holyrood, whatever, the concept of the drug consumption units, would you support that or not?
Look, this is a really complicated issue, Michelle, and I don't claim to be a great expert. There was a report done for the government a couple of years ago by somebody I know quite well called Dame Carol Black, who's a former president of the Royal College of Physicians. And she made it very clear that, you know, that there are two parts to dealing with the drugs problem in this country. One of them is cracking down on the criminal side, but the other is treatment. And I agree with her that the focus needs to be on helping people out of dependency on drugs, and more money needs to be invested in that. Now, do drug consumption rooms fit in with that, or are you better funding spaces in which people can come, in which they can actually wean themselves off their addiction? I don't know the answer to that very easily. I don't claim to be an expert.
You have detox clinics, you have detox facilities.
The detox approach and getting people off drugs is what we should be focusing on, and this could well be a distraction from that.
Well, look, there was some figures that was released last week, right, and it showed that in Scotland, if I can just get this up on the screen, Scotland's drug death rate is one of the highest in the UK and the rest of Europe. Look at it. Scotland is right up there at the top. So are these kind of consumption rooms then a way to help stop these drug deaths?
My fear is it's just another step on the path to legalisation, essentially. And I'm a real reactionary on this, I have to say, and I say it unapologetically. I think drugs are a scourge on our society. I think that
Or even alcohol?
No, we're talking about, you know, recreational drugs.
Right.
And you know, there's an argument to say if we knew what the consequences of alcohol would be all of that time ago, would we have introduced it into our society as widespread as it is? Certainly with tobacco, I think if you said to people now, you know, if you knew then...
Yeah, booze and fags got invented today, would they be legalised?
Well, exactly. And I think with tobacco, certainly most people would say, well, no, of course not, because we've seen the damage that it can do.
But bring it back to these rooms then. What do we think to them?
Well, I kind of am. And if we don't take the same sort of view on this, there's a big lobby pushing for legalisation, and I think initiatives like this are very much part of that overall strategy. And if we don't take the view that we do now with tobacco, i.e. we know the damage that drugs can do, particularly with cannabis. I mean, people talk about cannabis as a harmless drug. It really isn't. And there's now a wealth of evidence from medical research is showing that there is a clear link between using cannabis and serious mental illness. So why aren't we doing what we say we would do with tobacco? If we knew then what we know now, we wouldn't legalise it. We're doing the very opposite when it comes to this sort of stuff. And I just think that we need to perhaps enforce the law. We've got this myth that there's a war on drugs in this country, and there really isn't. I think we need to take an approach like perhaps Japan, who do have a very, very stern anti-drug laws. It's no less a civilised or free society as a result of that, but doesn't have any sort of serious drug problem. We shy away from that in this country, and I'm never sure why.
Massive tangent, but I've travelled around Japan, and I've never got over the fact that grown adults, don't cross the road until the lights say that you can. So even if there's no cars coming, honestly, anyone that's travelled Japan, you'll probably agree with me.
It's a very polite and ordered society.
Actually, there are lots of countries where that's called jaywalking, and there are lots of countries where jaywalking is illegal.
Yeah, I just find
we're unusual in not making it illegal to cross the road with a red man.
Oh, it's very annoying, though. I have to wait right now for the green man because I'm trying to teach my child. You have to wait for the green man. And I find it so frustrating when it's an empty road. I'm like, come on, hurry up.
You don't stop at red lights anymore when your chauffeur's driving you around, do you? You're like the Prime Minister.
Shut up.
Like when the butler's bringing the champagne.
Well, chance would be a fine thing. Chance would be a lovely... Actually, I'm going to get a glass of bubbles in a minute. You can serve me if you want. You can do a bit of practice for that potential role, should it become available. Anyway, I do wonder, would people want one of these consumption units at the top of their street? Because the premise would be basically that these people could go in with whatever drugs they've got. You could potentially get it tested, see whether or not it's a safe, clean drug. Then you'd be able to potentially access things like clean needles and all the rest of it. Well, my thought about this is, well, it's all well and good making sure that these addicts, they have clean needles and safe drugs and all the rest of it. But where do these people then go? So you've got this mass congregation now of these people going into this unit at the end of your road. They're not going to sit there, are they, and experience the high and sit in this room for God knows how many hours. They're going to go off.
Well,
would you want that at the end of your road?
Nobody, I think, would put them in a residential area. You know,
we're not going to have it in the middle of nowhere, because how would people access it then?
Well, it might be in a centre of town or something like that. I mean, I'm not proposing this, so it's not for me to come up with solutions. I have serious doubts about whether it is actually not a distraction from what needs to be the main focus, which is helping people off drugs, rather than...
The main focus, if you ask me, should be helping to stop people take that first hit, because unfortunately, when you have that first hit, you know, the addiction, it's on you then, isn't it? It's, to me, the key is how do you stop people having that first potential hit? You tell me, because drugs, they don't just destroy the lives of the person using it. The devastation that it causes to the wider friends and family and beyond is absolutely immense.